Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Mark Charles Parse. He's a lifelong musician, ordained minister, author, blogger, inspirational speaker, and teacher. And he has written a book, His Eyes, a novel of hope from tragedy. There he shares his pilgrimage and also the real life experience that shaped his poignant young adult story of accidental shooting, family stress, and bullying. So we'll learn from him about why God allows tragedy, how the dying eyes of a loved one can transform into a vision of grace, and how ordinary people carry hope into darkness. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you, KJ. Appreciate that. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show. Mark, welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about grief, we'll talk about faith, and we'll talk about redemption and much more. But before that, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, your story, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Yes, I grew up in a wonderful family, family that showed love and helped us understand that God loves us through the power of Jesus Christ. So we were raised in a Christian family. I always loved music and played in the band and played guitar and all kinds of things. So when I went to college, I decided to become a music major and studied music and went into music ministry. I'm an ordained Christian pastor, but I'm not a preaching pastor. I'm a musical pastor. And so I've led choirs and orchestras and children's choirs and all kinds of musical settings in both the church and the community across my life. And now I'm retired, 70 years old, and my wife and I live on a mountain here in Western North Carolina in the United States.
Absolutely, absolutely. Living on a mountain, up on the mountain. So help us understand, Mark, from there, what is it that you want to say to the world with what you are doing, what you are saying, what you want them to understand?
The main point of my whole life has been helping people understand that because of my belief in God and the power of God through Jesus Christ, that God wants to have a relationship with us. He wants to live with us. He wants to walk with us, love with us, cry, laugh, just live. And he's pursuing us. He created us to live in relationship. And so religion is not just an end in itself. It is a means of connecting with the Creator God who made us and wants to talk with us and walk with us every day.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what stops God in connecting with us, and what is stopping us in connecting with our Creator?
Most of the time, it's our own pride, our own self-centeredness. We feel like we don't need anybody. We don't need anything. We are pursuing what we want in our lives, and we fail to realize that God is there for us to give us our most abundant life. And so we want to go our own way, do our own thing. It's kind of who we are as human beings. And to come to faith in God, we have to surrender that and accept his gift. And it's a gift of life and his gift of the Christian definition of salvation, and be his people, talk to him, live with him, walk with him.
Absolutely. So what is the way that you tell people, or your message to the people is to understand these things anywhere, in any country, any culture across the world?
That's right. People across cultures, we're all the same. I've been in India, I've been in Taiwan, I've been in uh, England and in Europe and across the Caribbean islands, singing and bringing people a message of hope and love throughout my whole ministry. And so this book I decided to write. I started in 2020, and it took me 5 years to craft the book. Is a story that brings to life those issues of how God is pursuing us, how He will work even through tragedy, that He could stop the tragedy, He could give us a perfect life, but He chooses not to because He wants us to choose Him in freedom. And so He suspends His perfect power to give us a free choice to accept Him or reject Him.
Absolutely. And since you have mentioned the book, let's talk a bit about the book itself. What was the inspiration of writing this book, especially, at a later stage in life? And tell us a story. What is it that you want to convey that is so important for the world?
Okay, yeah, I had written a worship book when I worked with worship leaders through the South Carolina Baptist Convention. I resourced worship leaders and did conferences and training and spoke in seminaries and colleges all across the country about that book. And it's called Going Full Circle: Worship That Moves Us to Discipleship and Mission. It's a missional worship book. And so I had written a book before. I'd done a lot of writing throughout my ministry, but I always wanted to write a novel. And so I started writing it in 2020 when my wife and I were getting ready to retire and move. We were looking through pictures of her classes. She's a retired public school teacher and administrator. And we were struck by the fact of how many of her former students had been touched by gun violence in their homes. And I researched and realized that handguns are the number one killer of children and teens in America. And so I wanted to write a story that helped promote the fact that we need gun awareness and gun safety in our homes, and use that medium as a way of proclaiming the fact that God will give us hope. He will walk with us through tragedy, that he gives us freedom in life, and so we're not robots, and so bad things happen, but God doesn't leave us or abandon us through those. He walks with us through every step of it. And so that's what the story is, and that's where it came about. So it took me 5 years to write it.
Absolutely. And talking of guns, handguns, uh, why did God allow to make this sort of weapons? He could have just prevented man from making it, and the problem would have been over. I want to understand your thoughts on this itself. God is the
Yeah.
creator. God is the Almighty. God knows everything. Why can't He do that? Why does He want tragedies to happen?
Well, he can do that, but he chooses not to because he wants to give us freedom. And he doesn't cause it to happen. He allows it to happen because he withholds his power in order for us to choose him or not. I liken it to like a parent. A parent could take a child and say, "I love you so much, and I want to be with you all the rest of your life, and so I'm going to lock you in your room and chain you to your bed and keep you here for myself." And that would not be love, that would be a crime. But God is the same way. He says, "I love you. I want to walk with you and have a relationship with you, but I want it to happen in freedom. So I am all powerful. I could make your life perfect. I could make you a robot and just do exactly what I want, and for your life to be exactly how I want it. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you freedom to choose in my all powerful decision to hold back my power to give you a choice to choose me." Hopefully, he wants us to choose him. But we have a choice, and that's because of his love. And so the book helps us understand that by looking at some passages from the Lord's Prayer.
Absolutely, absolutely, Mark. So, guns are a part of American culture.
Yes,
Maybe
they are.
God will not, come and directly step into it. But there are
That's
so many wise people, including politicians, including religious leaders, other leaders, corporate leaders, community leaders. They must be having their own perspective onto it. I can keep on reading reports about the violence as well as different views also. But for me, it is difficult to understand it the way you will understand it. Any particular person who has been staying there, they will understand it. Help us understand then what is it that you uh, want about this to be done. Only safety, or this should be banned because it is not required?
yes,
Are you an activist? Obviously you are not a political person, but
right.
I want to understand from who is your book for.
It's dealing with the reality of American culture, the American gun culture. Many publishers wouldn't touch my book because they felt like it was too controversial. Because to talk about guns at all draws a line in the sand, figuratively speaking, that that upsets people. The gun control people want more gun control. The gun rights people want less gun control. But so my book tries to avoid all of that. I'm not an activist. I could be personally, because I feel like we need to limit. Personally, I feel like we need to limit the assault rifles and those kinds of things that lead to mass killings. But I'm open to debate on that. But my main point was to say, where you have control over guns, control them responsibly, and that's primarily in your home. And so the book deals with an accidental shooting from a 16-year-old big brother's standpoint of the 12-year-old little brother and what it does to his family. And we see the results, just families torn up by gun violence in the homes, but most of it accidental or in the heat of anger or something like that. And so I'm trying to focus on, first of all, that problem and offer some solutions. There's a projectsafe.com reference at the back of my book. It's an organization, excuse me, I think it's .org, projectsafe.org, at the back of my book, that offers gun safety training and gun locks free of charge for use in the home. So my primary thing is not to choose sides, but to say to focus a microscope on the problem and offer some solutions, and then primarily to work from a spiritual standpoint to see how we can understand God helping us survive tragedy when it happens. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, Mark. And that is where the real learning is, that it may be a book. It may be, if I understand, as a story, which people
Right.
will try and understand it from their own point of view. But the learning can be real. How have you put into your book about the story, but then a family dealing with it, tackling it? Because what happens in the real world with guns and gun culture and handguns and other sort of guns, that is real. What can
Yes.
people, families, individuals, you know they can learn from your book about, after something like that has happened? How have you dealt it so that people can learn? What role does faith work here? What role does resilience has? Are there any other ways one can deal with situations? These are painful situations, and not easy to deal with.
That's right. The title itself, His Eyes, is the theme of the book is tracing in the 16-year-old protagonist, Michael. Michael is haunted by the dying eyes of his 12-year-old brother after this shooting accident. But over the course of the book, his eyes, the little brother's dying eyes, slowly morph into the loving and hopeful eyes of God. And he begins to replace that haunting vision of his brother's dying eyes with God's loving eyes. But on a lot of levels in the book, there are bad ways to deal with grief and tragedy. And the mother, who is a good lady, but she begins to abuse the prescription drugs for anxiety. The father, who's an estranged father, the mother father divorced, the father is angry and he wants to blame someone. He's looking for someone to blame. Bullies at school are calling Michael murderer, and so they're dealing with it the wrong way. Um, but in all of that, he has a next door neighbor who's an older man of faith who helps him come to understand God's role, walking with him and helping him and seeing the reality of the freedom God gives us, and that God doesn't cause tragedy, he allows tragedy. And so that voice of faith in the next door neighbor. And then he and his best friend go off on a camping trip to get away from some of the stress, and they meet a whole cast of characters of all ethnicities, each one of whom have a core faith that is driving them and giving them hope and giving them um, a purpose in their lives. And so he learns a lot from that 2-day camping trip where he meets a homeless man who introduces him to all of these characters who have a simple core faith in their lives. So it's a panoramic story that it paints a picture of all kinds of people dealing with grief in all kinds of ways, leading to redemption through God's eyes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, in a nutshell, what does your book say? What is it that you want to tell the people?
That is that there is hope in tragedy if you allow God to be a part of your life. Excuse me. If you allow him to love on you and open your heart and your life to him and see his eyes at work in your life, then it can lead to redemption. But it the key to it is our faith, our belief. We can't see it and touch it. We have to believe it. We have to believe it in faith. We have to believe and put our hope and trust in it. And in return, God will give us hope and redemption as he walks with us through life. So that's the basic message of the story, and it's a beautifully told story. I worked on it 5 years with a writing coach, and it is getting good reviews. And many people are saying how much it has meant to them in their lives as they have walked through tragedy at some point, because it's universal. We all have to deal with that at some time.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is so much to learn about all this from you and from your bookmark. And I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, want to have get your book. What is the best way for them to do so?
It's on Amazon. It's His Eyes, a novel of hope from tragedy. It's on Books a Million. It's on Barnes and Noble. All of those through the websites. I think it's also on Thrift Books, or you can go to my website, markcharlespowers.com. And on my website are also my weekly blog. I write a weekly blog called Glimpses of Grace, where I try to uplift people and inspire them with a glimpse of grace from real life. It comes out every Thursday in your inbox if you want to subscribe to it. So I'm blogging and promoting the book, and also promoting that Going Full Circle worship book that came out a few years ago. That's a nonfiction book about how to take worship and use it to make disciples and lead people on mission. So that's who and what I am. And my wife and I teach a Bible class in our church every week, and I lead a community chorus here in the mountains called Mountain Song. And all of that works together to try to say, walk with God and he will give you hope.
Absolutely, absolutely. Walk with God and He will give you hope. With this, it's set up on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Enjoyed it.